Hello YouTube, Sidekick here in my trusty Community A-4E Skyhawk version 2.0. Now we're going to do a little bit of flying today to do some takeoffs and landings, so I am bringing up the checklist so we can look at the pre-takeoff checklist. I warn you that I'm about to ignore most of it because today we're flying in an unarmed jet and we're just basically going to be doing circuits around the airport, so we don't need to prepare a lot of the systems that are on there. Nonetheless, we'll just give you a chance to take a look at the cockpit. And I am going to do one other thing that is off script here. I am going to put my APC in standby because I'm going to use it later, and I just want you to see that you do have to put it in standby so that and wait for it to warm up so that it can be available on landing. So yeah, today is going to be a very unofficial kind of practice. I'm going to fly some circuits the way I need to practice landing. I'm really still just trying to get good at landing this jet, not trying to follow a lot of procedures. I'm just trying to get myself familiar with how it flies. But it is worth going through the checklist so you guys can see where to find things if you are actually using the checklist to go out on a mission. So the first part is to set up your radar altimeter, which I'm not going to do because I don't need it today. And then the other thing would be to make safe all of the weapons, but of course we're in an unarmed jet, so that's not really important, but that is where you would find those switches if you needed to check them. And then we're going to go over here and we would check and make sure that our navigation radar is set to land or sea. But again, we're not really too concerned about navigating. We're never going to be outside of the airport today. And then we would also want to make sure that our nav computer was set up and working properly, and that's here. And then we're going to go back over to the left now and look for that oxygen switch. And it's way back here, right there. Yes. Then we're going to take a look at the AFCS panel. And all of this is preset because this is a hot start jet. If you hot start, everything on this checklist will be taken care of. You can be sure of that, but it's still worth going through just for practice. Now, I am also supposed to, at this point, disable my spoilers, but again, because I'm going to be doing circuits, I'm just going to leave them on so it's one less thing for me to forget when I'm landing. And then after that, we take a look at our countermeasures, which we don't need. Our MCL, again, which we don't need today. And looking back to the front, we see we've got an APC light, so we know that the APC will warm up. We don't need it right now, but it's good to know that it's working. And we're not going to use the ECM panel today. So we've pretty much ignored the checklist, but at least you know where to find everything. We are going to set the flaps to half, and then I'm going to make one more modification to the checklist. I find for land takeoffs, I like to use about 5 notches of trim rather than 8. 8 is really necessary if you're on the carrier, but on a ground takeoff, I find 5 makes the rotation just a little bit more manageable. Okay, time to get this party started. We have the controls indicator up there in the bottom left. You can see that I got the throttle all the way forward, using my brakes to steer just to stay down the middle of the runway until I get a little bit more speed. Then I can start using the rudder once I'm going fast enough. You can see that we've trimmed the stick back. You can see those dots moving down. That means the slats are pulling in, and they come in just about the time we hit rotation speed. You will find that you probably need some forward pressure as you come off, especially if you've got 8 notches of trim, but even with 5. And then as you pull the flaps up, the nose will tend to go down and you'll need to pull it back a little bit. You want to climb out at about 300 knots. So don't climb too quickly. Let your speed build up until you're about 300, and then gentle back pressure to try and hold 300 as you climb out. So now in a normal pattern, we'd be doing a brake turn at 1,000 feet. We'd be making a final turn at 500 feet. And all of that gets to be pretty busy and pretty exciting, at least for me, because I find the main thing that I'm needing to learn is how to fly the A4 when it's in that slow flight regime. Once you drop the speed brakes and slow down under 200 knots, the jet really behaves differently than it used to. And so I need to give myself some time to learn how to fly it there if I'm going to fly it effectively. So we're going to start a little higher and we're going to extend a little longer. So we're putting out the speed brakes now. And I'm just going to focus on getting the jet back in trim, back in level flight, and slowing down and feeling it a little bit better as I'm doing that before I even drop the gear and the flaps and really mess things up. So we're still not quite down to 200. And you're going to find that once you start approaching that 200, you really start to lose lift, and the back pressure on the stick really has to come in, and the power really has to come in. And that's what is taking us a bit of getting used to. The jet just behaves differently. Okay, I think I've got it stabilized, so I'm going to turn base now. And I'm just going to start picking up the field. It's not a bad angle of descent, and so we'll put the gear down and we'll put the flaps down, and now I'm just going to focus on the angle of attack indicator. Now the APC light is on. I'm not using APC, but I do have it warmed up, so I'm just trying to get the AOA where I want it at this point until I've turned final. And I'm going to use a slightly different method that's been working for me. Now, normally what you would say is that you want to use the stick to manage your angle of attack, so keep it right in the middle, and then use your power to manage your landing point. That works well, at least in a lot of the jets, a lot of the planes that I fly, but the A4, not so well. Seems to have a little bit of coupling between those two things, and you always seem to be juggling both. What I find actually works a bit better, and maybe this is because the jet was made to work with APC, is I'm actually going to fly the landing point with the stick, and then I am going to fly my speed with the power. So I'm going to do the opposite of what you're normally trained to do, and I recognize that may not be standard, but it is working for me. If you have some thoughts on that, I'd like to hear them. Please leave some constructive comments. So I'm a little bit fast, so I'm slowing down with power, but I'm trying to keep the nose at about the level where the runway is coming in. The landing point is, my aim point is coming in where I want it to be, and I'm just slowly pulling off the power but trying to keep the nose up a little, and then every time the power starts to come off too much, I'm giving it a little bit more because it is easy to overshoot. So I'm still a little bit fast, but not all that fast, and I'm still coming off the power when I'm a little too high. I'm just trying to keep the aim point where I want it. Still coming off the power because I'm a little fast. Just a little fast. There we go. Now we're good. Now we're good. Now a little bit more power. A little bit more power. And we're down. And get the brakes on. The spoilers are active. And that wasn't a bad landing. So as you can see, I'm using, well, look at that. We're laying rubber down the runway. Didn't know that was happening. Interesting. I don't think there's an indication in the cockpit when you're skidding like that. Something to keep in mind, though. So we got the flaps up, we got the speed brakes in, and we're just going to stop here and pull off the runway. So overall, not bad. I find that method, the one I described there, is working better for me than the method I was used to using, where I really tried to stay quiet on the stick. I find in the A4 I need to be active on the stick as well as the power during landing. It seems to be working for me right now. I am still learning, though. So that was, I did that actually with manual power control. Now let's reset the sim here, and let's do one with actual APC. And I'll tell you why. Part of the reason I started using this method of doing it is because this is very much what happens when you use APC, as I will demonstrate. So again, taking off 5 notches of trim, half flaps, using the brakes to stay centered until we get enough speed to use the rudder itself. You see that the stick is notched back because of the trim. You see the spoilers, or the slats coming in, and as they come in, we hit the rotation speed. A little bit steeper angle of descent. This time I didn't push forward quite so much. Gear is up, flaps are coming up, slats are pulling in. So same sort of thing, maybe a little bit tighter pattern this time, but again, I'm going to go out here to a comfortable altitude. I'm going to come around. I'm going to fly down parallel to the runway, drop the speed brakes, or pull out the speed brakes at the end of the runway, and then I'm going to sort of clean up my approach before I turn base, and drop the gear and the flaps. And when I drop the gear and the flaps, I am going to engage the approach power compensation, the APC. And so what APC will do is it will handle the throttle. I will be hands-off throttle. I will only be flying the stick. Now, the standard wisdom is that you are supposed to fly the angle of attack indicator with the stick and let the APC handle the rest. I'm going to do something slightly different. Just like I did the last time, I am going to aim at the runway and let APC handle the rest, which it will do. And that's, well, we'll take a look. Okay, speed brakes are out. Once again, everything's fine until we start slowing down to close to 200. Then the nose starts to get really, really, really heavy. And we're going to want to add a fair bit of back trim. And then we're also going to want to add a bit of power. Still up at 250. Going to kill a little bit more speed here. A little bit more back pressure. Right, so as I was saying, this is not the way that the manual says you're supposed to use APC, but it's working for me, so I'll be interested to see what you guys think and what your experience has been. Okay, so we're down under 200. Nose is starting to get pretty heavy now. We're having to add some power. We're a little bit lower this time, so I'm going to wait a little longer to drop the gear and the flap. So I haven't engaged the APC. It's still in standby at this point. You can see our slats are out, at least partially out. And I think that's when the slats start to deploy, is when you really feel the airplane enter a different flight regime, I think. Okay, now that we're getting lined up on the runway, we'll get the gear down, the flaps down. Okay, and also time to get the APC on, which I did there. And so now, as well as getting lined up on the runway, I'm not touching the power. The jet's doing all of that. I am trying to keep my nose where I want it to be to hit my aiming point, and I'm letting the power take care of everything else. And you can see it's doing a pretty good job of managing my angle of attack, probably a little bit better than I was doing. But I'm also moving to my target point where I want it to be. Now, of course, the smoother I am in holding that point, the easier time that the APC has. So if I'm letting the nose move up and down like I am, then it's kind of a little bit all over the place. So I think the trick here is to refine your technique so you keep keep the jet nice and stable, and APC will be your friend at that point. You can see that every time it loses the angle of attack, it does get it back fairly quickly. And I'm just holding the nose, and I'm pointing at the part of the run where I want to land. I'm just holding that, and then power off as the wheels hit. Spoilers up, brakes on, flaps up, speed brakes in. Okay, that's going to do it for today. Two different landing approaches, one without APC, one with it. As I said, they are non-standard patterns, just really working on the landing technique. I will be having a video fairly soon with a proper Case 1 recovery on a carrier. Not me flying, that's why I can get it done. But that should be coming out in the next little while, so you can see a more standard landing approach. But for now, I'm a little pleased with the progress I'm making. I really had been having some trouble getting the A4 on the ground consistently where I wanted it without breaking the wheels. And that is getting a lot better as I am practicing. So be interested to hear how you guys are doing and any comments you have on how to handle the A-4E in landing. And for now, this is going to be Sidekick, signing off.